Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
Omkara, the look, the having the pan and the kaini, the tooth, to transform yourself, to get the limp right. And then as you mentioned, just to have that language. And I think having Deepak Dobriyal as his language coach, for months before and even on set. I mean, hats off to him. But hats off to Saif Ali Khan for making it convincing. That could have been a disaster if he was wrong, even, here and there.
Omkara opens with an absolute banger of a scene, and from there on, never lets go of its spell over the audiences for the next 2.5 hours, before closing with a haunting gut punch of a stretch. This is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. 2006 was a solid year for Hindi cinema. There was Krish, Dhoom 2, Dawn, Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna, Khosla Ka Ghosla, as well as few more noteworthy films releasing that year. But Omkara would probably be my pick of the films of 2006. Now, before moving on, an important friendly reminder for the listeners. Love of Cinema podcast is my labor of love, and with every episode, I've attempted to create something that cinephiles will continue to find value, not just today, but over time as well. If you enjoy organic conversations centered on Indian cinema, Love of Cinema podcast was created for people just like you. So if you enjoy the pod, please do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content with shelf life for fans of Indian cinema everywhere. You'll find the link to support the show in the show notes. You can also support the show directly from the podcast website. It's fast, it's easy, and your support is greatly appreciated. Getting back to Omkara. To talk more on Vishal's tremendous adaptation of the Bard's classic tragedy of envy, deceit, and rage, that is Othello, I have a special guest with me today. Jamie Alter is a popular sports journalist and YouTuber who is also a full-blown Hindi film buff and a fellow 90s nut. And of course, Jamie is also the son of the late great Tom Alter, an actor whose films all of us 90s kids have grown up with. I was delighted to have Jamie on the pod, as not only is Omkara one of his favorite films, but he also rates Omkara over Maqbool among Vishal's Shakespeare's adaptations. Jamie and I look back on Omkara, jamming on everything from our favorite scenes and the inspired casting of Saif Ali Khan to how the music of the film is such an integral part of the storytelling, and how the opening and the closing scenes of the film, as Jamie pointed out, are an ode to Sholay. We also talked about Vishal's shelved Julius Caesar film with Sanjay Dutt and Arshad Warsi, and who we would like to see as Caesar if Vishal were to have a go at it now. That and much more. All things Omkara with Jamie Alter. Here goes. Jamie, how are you doing?
Very well, Himanshu. Very well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. Like we were talking before this recording, that I'd been planning to have you on the podcast for a while now. So I'm glad that it finally transpired. And it's,
Likewise.
one of our favorite films.
It is. And I don't know how many people remember it as fondly as certainly I do. I know a few friends of mine have really hardcore views on the film, but I think we're going to have a fun discussion because there's a lot to cover when you're talking about a film like Omkara.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's one of my probably favorite films of 2000s. And it's my favorite Vishal adaptation, Shakespeare adaptation, is definitely still Maqbool. But, Omkara is not far behind.
Look, I have a lot of friends who would say it's sacrilege that I rate Omkara above Maqbool. I mean, for so many reasons. I mean, you actually wonder, in 2003, because the film Maqbool came out in 2004. In 2003, because films did take almost a year to make, 20, 25 years ago. How did Vishal Bhardwaj with literally one film to his name and a lot of tremendous soundtracks. How did he get that cast together? So it is definitely the gold standard. But I have a soft spot for Omkar. In fact, I messaged Vishal when the film came out saying, uh, for me, Makbul was a perfect one day match, but I think Omkara is a perfect test match because he's a cricket nut and he was a very active player when the films came out. So for me, I mean, I know many people will say, "Are you mad? How do you rate Makbul over Omkara?" And the acting is superior, definitely in Makbul. A lot of haunting scenes, but something about the package that Vishal bound with Omkara makes it a little special for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was watching this interview with Robin Bhatt, who co-wrote Omkara with Vishal and Abhishek Chaubey. And he said something interesting about adaptations, and especially adaptations of the classics. And he was saying that when you're adapting something like Shakespeare, right, don't try to improve on the material. It's already damn good. Just go with it. But, personally, I've always believed that, when you're adapting something like a classic, yes, of course, you got to stay loyal to the original source, but you also got to make it its own thing, right? You got to bring something to it. Do you think both of these things came across in the case of Omkara?
100%. Look, I mean, we've discussed Makbul between Othello and Macbeth. Probably Macbeth is a better written play by Shakespeare, but Omkara has. I just feel, and again, sacrilege to many because Omkara was so well woven into the Bombay or Mumbai underworld scene. But Omkara, look what it did. It stayed true to the script. I say script, but the source material, but it Indianized it in 2006, and I think we'll probably loop back into the wider theme of what the Bollywood or Hindi film scene was in 2006. Films were not really shot, and I know the film was not shot just in UP, but to take Western UP, where Vishal is from, he's from Meerut. Nowadays, every second, if not every show or web series or movie has a very North Indian UP tinge to it. But 2006, it was, yes, there were some films being made, but they were few and far between. On a wide scale, sorry, tongue twister, wide scale level, to bring out something like UP politics, the Bahubali concept, to have fantastic cinematography, to get those kind of actors. I think barring Ajay Devgan, nobody would have expected any of the other main actors. Deepak Dobriyal, nobody really knew about, so I'm not going to put him. Saif Ali Khan, Nawab Saab, English thinking upper class Saif Ali Khan, Vivek Oberoi, who had a fantastic start, but then for several reasons had fallen a few notches down. Bipasha Basu, I mean, in that role, the weakest character, but still one, below Chaman Mahar, she does stand out. And then Kareena Kapoor, who had gotten ample opportunities to show her acting chops, but really hadn't gotten a role like this. So I'm looking at all that, Konkana Sen Sharma. And then the music. I have never seen, I'm going to say Hindi film because I'm not a real connoisseur of pan India films. I've watched a fair few, but I want to say Hindi films. I've never seen a Hindi film where each bloody song in that film is not just a song. It takes the film forward. So these are some of the factors which just for me makes that film stand out. And I can watch it any time of the year. And something that I missed in all these repeat viewings, something will. How did I miss that? Ye khada hai piche. So films like that which have that recall value, Himanshu, I just love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great point. And, we'll talk about the music in detail. But, one of the things that I noticed when I was preparing for this episode is that I was thinking that, each of these three Shakespeare adaptations by Vishal can be seen perhaps as the only Shakespeare musicals. And I'll explain what I
Yep.
mean by that. So, in the sense that music is an integral part of those adaptations, especially Omkara, and I think that in itself is like a standout feature of these adaptations, right? Because there have been many famous musicals based on Shakespeare. Everybody knows about West Side Story, based on Romeo and Juliet. Kiss Me Kate, I think, was based on Taming of the Shrew. The Boys of Syracuse was based on, I think, Comedy of Errors. So there have been many, shows or musicals which have been based on Shakespeare. But as far as a straight up adaptation is concerned, probably these three are the only ones that come to my mind. And I thought, how cool is that? Because they're coming from India. And these are the only three kind of Shakespeare musicals, if you think about it.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that is very simple. It was made by somebody who was a music director a long time before he became a film director. Maybe in someone else's hand, you may have that film brought to a superior director or a bigger director. But Vishal's grasp of music, being born into a musical household, the classical training, his wife being a fantastic musician and singer, I just think that's where it is. And you have to have, of course, you have to have a sense of film, of script, the audience sensibilities, but having that grasp, that pucker on music, I think the answer is there. And what a fantastic musician he is as well. So
Absolutely. The singing, the music, and of course the lyrics. We got to talk about Gulzar's lyrics. I mean, how big of a role did they play in making Omkara? What it has become over the years within the context of not just cinema lore, but as well as within the context of pop culture. I mean, these songs, I mean, I mean, memes, aside, but all these songs are like just part of cinema lore now.
absolutely. And that song, Naina Thug Lenge,
Yeah.
what a deep song. You first think, oh, he's talking about eyes, but then there's just so much more. And then you look at the juncture of where that song comes in. Omi Shukla has been shot. He comes to that Vakil's house, he knocks on the door, Dolly opens the door, their love starts there. What a song. And 19 years later, songs like that do resonate. And even that song, which is not really a song, is more of a lullaby, Jag Ja Re Gudiya. It has two versions. You hear the final version. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it barely gets maybe a minute of screenplay at the end, if not 35, 40 seconds. But it haunts you. So full marks to Gulzar Saab. And again, that tuning that he and Vishal had way, way before they made this movie. As you said, it still resonates nowadays. And I hope people watching this show who are not too familiar with the movie can go back and watch it and understand, what impact the music had in that film.
Yeah, that song, especially, Naina Thugling, yeah, I mean, that's like the core of the film because it essentially is telling you, about the suspicion in, Omkara's mind that is, the seed that was planted by Dolly's father. And later on, if you will, kind of watered by a Langra. So, it just keeps on growing in his mind. And he does get deceived by his eyes. And there's so many like wonderful things that, Vishal has done. For example, like if you notice, all of those scenes where Ajay Devgan is wearing those shades. He's wearing those like glasses, right? Half of the time. And I think most of those scenes where he comes across, wearing those shades are the scenes where his perception of reality is compromised. Because he's seeing that through kind of a
Interesting.
tint, either by, courtesy of Langra's deceit or by the seed of the suspicion sown in his mind by Dolly's father. And I think that song kind of hints towards that, at very early in the movie, because like you said, the song comes in right, after the title drop. So it's a nice foreshadowing of what's going to happen, and the glasses that he's wearing is kind of like a symbol, for
Yeah,
his
that's a
personality.
very interesting point you raised. And he also wears them, when, of course, he's mainly outside, so that's fine. But it's, just to pick up on what you said, he has this reputation, this persona to live up to, right? Of the guy who, when he walks in, left, right, aju baju, everyone bows their head. And he cannot show that doubt which you just mentioned. So I think that's a very good thing that, and I'm sure it is true that Vishal and the writers Robin and Abhishek Chaube weaved in. And again, it's just one of those. It's like I said, it's one of those finer details where I'm going to now go back and watch it again and try and find how many of those scenes he's actually wearing the sunglasses in. So that's the beauty of that film.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, this is just something that I'm reading into the film. Maybe it's not what Vishal intended, but I looked at it like that because in some of the scenes where he's not wearing the glasses, it's like his judgment seems not to be clouded. So I thought, okay, that was interesting.
Interesting, very interesting.
Jamie, we got to talk about Saif's Langda Tyagi. I mean, when I tweeted that, I'm looking at Omkara for this episode, and I asked people, hey, what's your favorite bit, from Omkara? So people said everything, from the train scene to the opening scene, the closing scene. They're all great shots and great scenes. But I mean, how great was Saif? I think this was his first rustic kind of a role. And like you said, we knew of Saif this Nawab, and then here he is, doing this rustic role. He also picked up the accent pretty well. How do you look at Saif's Langda Tyagi as a performance, as well as his interpretation of Iago?
Outstanding. You see, one of the beautiful things about watching uh, Omkara, and I watched it in the theater. I think I watched it 3 times in the first week. First of all, me and my friends, we were just blown away by Ajay Devgan's presence. 2 days later, yes, we saw that Saif Ali Khan is onto something, but the second screening, it was all about him. And then the third one was all about Deepak Dobriyal and so forth. In fact, Robin Butt said in a podcast a few months ago that even he had doubts. He's like, Vishal, Nawab Saab is going to play this role, but Vishal was convinced. And I think Saif Ali Khan, because even Saif Ali Khan's film trajectory, even not just the 90s, but from 2000 to 2006, it had peaks and it had a lot of lows. I mean, I know Hum Tum was a big hit, but it was still a very Saif Ali Khan type, role. Ek Hasina Thi was, I think, the film where he got an opportunity to do something different, and I think he was brilliant in that. But it still had shades of a guy. He was suave, he was a womanizer, he could wear nice pants. It was the cool guy. By that time he had this jawline and a bit of a stubble, so he was looking damn good. Omkara, the look, the having the pan and the kaini, the tooth, to transform yourself, to get the limp right. And then, as you mentioned, just to have that language. And I think having Deepak Dobriyal as his language coach, for months before and even on set. I mean, hats off to him. But hats off to Saif Ali Khan for making it convincing. That could have been a disaster if he was wrong, even, here and there. And again, probably should have expect Vishal to really, keep a good grasp on things. He probably wouldn't have let Saft do a bad job, but it could have gone south in many, many ways. Hats off to him. And as you said, the start, the beginning, the end, that railway scene, when it's pouring rain, the chal jutta, all that stuff. But for me, I just have to get back to that opening scene of Omkara. I think it's the greatest opening scene in Hindi cinema because
Wow.
you go back to the era of Sholay, where you get that rustic landscape. Nothing's happening. That could be Samba and those guys sitting on top of those rocks, just waiting for the next innocent caravan to go by, and we'll go and loot them and kill them. That landscape, that shot. I'm forgetting the cinematographer's name. I think he did Kamini as well. Hussein
Tasaduk Hussain,
something.
I think.
That's it. That's it. So I wasn't too far off. But that landscape, to capture that arid, rugged landscape, I think that was a fantastic scene. And then to pull back and see these two louts just sort of sitting there, scratching their ears. One's got a gun, and they're waiting for that bus to come back. Saf had me like wow in that opening scene. And then of course there's a scene. In fact, Robin Butt also revealed on that podcast that I referred to, they got him to shoot the the lake scene, the dam scene first, when he says "Kood blankety blank," because they wanted the Nawab in Saif to just be shredded to pieces there. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm just referencing a few scenes. There's so many scenes where he just eats up the screen, and he stands up to Ajay Devgan, who had a fantastic body of work well before this film came around. Konkana Sen Sharma, fantastic actress. So Saf, I mean, I don't think he's done a better role before or after um, Omkara.
By the way, did you like Lal Kaptan?
Couldn't finish it. Couldn't
Oh,
finish
really?
it.
Wow. Okay.
See, but again, good question. A lot for me, this is just a personal experience. A lot of films um, are started and finished based on where you are in your life and where you are in that moment. And unfortunately, Lal Kaptan comes at a time when I was a bit distracted. Um, for me, the biggest example is just going slightly off track. Gangs of Wasipur. The world seems to rave about that film. I actually walked out in the interval because um, the the Noida audience that I was watching it with was just obscene, and I'm like, you're just laughing at the gullies, you should be anyway. So I'm very particular when I watch it, and I've gone back to watch it, but somehow that the bad experience of watching it film, and I've gone back and I've watched it on DVD and VHS back in the day, DVD, and I finished it. But I have this really quirky thing where if you didn't enjoy it the first time, somehow I'm just not able to enjoy it. And again, because Omkara came in a very fun time of my life, and I was with 3, 4 guys at work who loved the film. Maybe had they all not loved it as much, and maybe if I'd gone alone, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. But sometimes when you like who you're watching it with, what mental state you're in, how your day is gone. And I think watching it with those 3 guys, 4 guys, in fact, at Fame Ad Labs in Andheri 3 times in a week, that also really enhanced it. So yes, I tried to watch Lal Kaptan. I was very, very keen because of the director and Saf, but I couldn't get through it. It's also one of those films which you end up watching on OTT, right? So if you get halka sa distracted, it's very hard to go back. So I have my quirks when watching movies.
No, we all do. We all do. But coming back to Langra, I got to say that, I think everybody agrees that this is one of his best performances, Saif's. And again, the way that Vishal, Abhishek, and Robin have written this character and the way that, Vishal has directed it, I mean, there's so much thought put into it. So, very early on, there's a great scene, when in the opening scene of the film, where Langra kind of gets up and starts walking, right, with his gun. And it's a low angle scene, like a very Western, like, angle. And we know that he's a sniper, right? So, he is someone who kills from a distance. And that's how he also operates in his deceitful ways as well, because the way that he keeps cloaking the lie, that he's propagating here. He always doesn't try to do it bluntly. He's doing it from a distance. Like even from the very first time, when Langra and Omkara are going towards Dolly's house and they think that they saw Kesu, ride by on his motorbikes. And Omkara asks him, do you think that was Kesu? And he says, no, no, I don't think that was Kesu. And he tries to deny it like 2, 3 times, because he's a very smooth operator. And he eventually wants him to believe that, but he doesn't want him to, see through him. So that's, that he's always operating from a distance, even in his, deceitful ways. And the same thing happens on that railway tracks scene that you talked about, where Omkara is really pushing him for a ha or a na as to whether there's something between Kesu and Dolly. And after Omkara, finally shoves the gun in his mouth, demanding an answer, he screams, nah, and only to follow it up very cunningly by saying that "Ye sunna chahte the na." So as if it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
na. So he's doing
yeah.
all these little things, and I think there's one more shot, where that's a nice shot where he shoots Kesu, and he literally puts the gun on Raju's shoulder. And shoots
Yep,
him.
yep, yep.
So it's like symbolic of how the way this guy operates. So again, very beautifully done by Seth as well as Vishal, and I think he stole the show. He stole the show. The character was there. Iago is a character that often steals the show. And to think that, there was a time when Amir Khan was supposed to co-produce this film and star as Langra. And, if you had not seen the film, you would think, hey, how can Amir Khan not do this role? And how can Saif be chosen to do this role? And once you've seen the film, oh my God. I mean, I think a lot of Amir fans will hate me for saying this, but I think Saif would have trumped him.
I think so. I think so. Because it's just you, like I said, you have to be in a certain space. And I mean, 2006, I mean, again, Amir Khan had what? He had Rang De Basanti, I think he had that year. He had Fana. So he was in his comeback after the disaster of a couple of films, Man and Mela, was fully on track. And he's got a great script sense. He's a fantastic actor. He would have done his
Great
homework.
actor, no doubt, yeah.
But I think Saif, the bhook, the hunger that Saif would have wanted. I mean, he must have had sleepless nights in, in the bad days of all those Akshay Kumar, Sunil Shetty star movies, wondering, will I ever get a script, which blows my mind. So I think he probably had a lot more to prove, and I think that's probably why he would have trumped. He would have
I think
trumped
so.
Amir
Yeah,
Khan.
yeah. Completely agree with you. I think this was a stage also when, if I'm not mistaken, he was actively seeking out different roles, because he had that hunger and he wanted to prove a point. So, yeah, Saif is absolutely just smashing as Langda Tyagi. But, then we come to Deepak Dobriyal, I think, which this is his first major role. And such an excellent actor, we have discovered him since, in so many great performances. I mean, how well does he portray that fine line between a Bewakoof and a Chutia? Like Saif says, I mean, you need a solid actor to do that.
Absolutely, and it's, I mean, he gets top billing with established stars, right? And very, very good actors. So it was a risk, obviously, by the makers. Obviously they would have seen him do something, and I'm sure his screen test and audition were brilliant. But he just fit that role, like the look he had. He looks like, guys, I've never met Deepak Dobriyal. I've never met that kind of that character, but you've seen them in small towns. You've seen them in a Dehradun, in a Rajpur, in a Meerut, or even if you're back in the day when it took 9 hours to drive from Missouri to Delhi, you stop in these small towns. You sort of, you know what I'm saying? You've seen guys like him, the opening scene. He's wearing that typical shadi ka suit, which lakhs of people wear. His hair is dyed, it's floppy. He's got the walk. He's got that mala of notes around his neck when he gets on the moped and tries to chase the car. The way he falls down. You've seen clowns, if I could use the word like that. But he goes on to prove himself much more than a clown. Is he comic relief? To a certain extent, but the acting is just, you feel for him when he doesn't get dolly, and where the anger comes from, and when he's made fun of. He's loyal. I mean, I think you speak of loyalty, you speak of playing tricks, being deceitful. These are all facets of the best and worst Shakespeare works. So again, the writers have stayed true to that. But a character like that, like I said, to match Saif Ali Khan, with which he spends most of the screen time. uh, Very few scenes with Omi Shukla, but when he's there, you're still looking at him. The scenes with Kesu Firangi, he really has him. They're on the roof, and Saif says, "Jai shadi ka card band." That's also one more way of saying, I'm going to put this guy on the path to destruction as well. So yeah, I mean, Deepak Dobriyal, I had never seen him before. I watched a lot of his work since then, but he was just one of those reasons why you went back and said, who was that guy? We had the net in 2006. It wasn't as massive as it is now. But we googled, who's this guy? And again, I don't think he had a Wikipedia page back in 2006. So but you remember, Acha, he's that guy, Deepak Dobriyal. Have to start looking out for him. So just one of the gifts that just keeps on giving from Omkara.
And testament to how good he really was in this role is that, I personally was more angry at Langra's character for making a Mickey out of this guy than for his, deceit towards Omkara and what he's trying to do with him. So, that's how much you connect with this character, right? Because you really like him and he's such a likable character. And the fact that he's been taken for a ride by this guy kind of disturbs you more than the main deceit of the play itself. So that's again testament to how good Dobriyal was. Ajay Devgan is always good. I mean, Ajay like can literally sleepwalk in these kind of roles, even like Shakespearean roles, I think, because he's that good. So, but what do you make of Ajay's performance here?
Fantastic. I mean, I think that was the second role after Company, when I said, this guy needs more roles. Look, we knew. I mean, by the time Omkara rolled about, this guy had been an action star for what, 15 years. He'd given hits, he'd given flops. He was typecast. He'd done 501 of these, typical 90s potboiler revenge films. But then he had a Zakham, and he had a Company. He had a Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam. But I still felt, and look, hats off to him for still staying relevant. 19 years later, he can be doing Golmaal 15. He can be doing what Singham 10 or 12. He's fantastic. But it's the Hum Dil De Chuke Sanams. It's the companies. It's the Omkaras when his character gets a lot more not just screen time, but when there's more attention to detail to writing these roles. Every good book, every good movie, every good web series, it all comes down to the writing, and the characterization. And I think getting that role of the lawyer. I forgot his character's name in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, and then of course Malik in Company, and he's had some good films down the line. But for me, these three stand out because as good as an actor he is, and he can get into the skin, and he can brood, and he can be intense, and he can be macho. He still needs a damn good character on paper. And I think that was the hallmark of that. Yes, it's Othello and it's Shakespeare, but it was Indianized so well. And even I don't think he'd done, just like Seth, he'd not done any rustic village role, right? He may have played guys who've come from small towns, but he's always been probably borrowing that role in Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam. He's always been the larger than life guy, right? I mean, his opening scene in 1991 was possibly one of the biggest or the most innovative film entries in Bollywood. On a bike doing splits. So he'd had this personality, but then to channel something like an Omi Shukla, outstanding. So as I said earlier on this podcast, for me, the first viewing, you're like, okay, we've seen him, but wow, this guy's damn good. And he just from start to finish, the way he's used, the way he's also tricked, the way he gets revenge, the way he's just brutal at the end of the film. It takes a very, very fine actor to pull it off, and nobody else could have done that, I think, than Ajay Devgan.
And again, a hallmark of a good actor is that, he makes it look easy, right? So that's why, I mean, I say stuff like, he could have sleepwalked into this role and stuff like that. But that's because of his craft, that he's able to do that because it looks so seamless. Then, of course, Karina. I love Karina in quieter roles, where she comes out of her comfort zone. She rarely got those roles back then, which were usually the usual fare. But whenever she did get these kind of different roles, she killed it. I mean, because again, she's such a solid actor. And I think she did this once in Dev, Govind Nilani's Dev. And later on, much, I think maybe in early 2010s and mid 2010s, she started getting some, better roles. But back then, I mean, it was tough for her too. So, I mean, she was just perfect for this. And she brings that, naive and innocent look that you need for someone like Desdemona. And she also fits the bill, of her physical description. So she was fantastic as well.
And again, it just goes back to what we discussed before. It's taking someone out of their comfort zone. Yes, she made her film debut in a film like Refugee, which I think was a lot to expect of someone that young and so naive. But there's literally, again, I'm forgetting her list of films before Omkara, but you see Refugee, then you see Dave. I think Dave was 2004. But she had done those typical candy floss roles. She's damn good at them, like
Right.
the Pooh from K3G, and
Yeah.
and even that utterly horrible film with Fardeen Khan, which I actually managed to sit through. She was still good. So she had a niche. She had a brand value.
Fita. Yeah.
No, there was one.
Oh,
Fida
Kushi,
as well.
Kushi.
There was
Yeah.
Kushi,
Yeah.
Kushi. God awful film, but she sunk her two teeth into it, in the front two teeth, and she made the most of it. So she was a very good performer. But again, the two of us could probably count on one hand the kind of films which stood out in the 7 or 6 7 years that she'd had maximum before this. So it was also like Seth. It was putting her in a very uncomfortable de-glam role. The dialect that was not familiar to her as well. Yes, she's the most modern girl in a small town, but you have to really get into that small town look and feel. Whether you're walking with your sahelis, or you're waiting for Omi Shukla outside the college. So I thought she was fantastic, and just like I talked about Seth, taking someone of her potential and her caliber and her experience. This is not 36 Chinatown. This is not all those films. Fida is one more. Where she fits in so perfectly. But to break the mold with a film like that, hats off to her as well. And again, one of the reasons why that film is is so standout for us.
And Jamie, let's talk about some of the our favorite moments from the film. Maybe these are scenes, songs,
Oh,
or even just a dialogue. You mentioned the opening scene, and you already talked a lot about that. By God, that was a smashing scene, wasn't it? I mean, I still remember watching it in the cinemas. And yeah, I was blown away by the opening scene. It was very, I mean, it's how shall I put this? It was very unlike an opening for the films back then. It
exactly.
really sets it up, the movie, and then in the later course of the film, you will understand the significance of that scene. But you mentioned you were blown away by that scene as well, right?
It's a fantastic scene. It may not be the best scene in the film, but like we discussed, it's a fantastic start. Again, I go to that pan shot. There's nothing happening. You just see that bus come by. So to sort of go back, it's a throwback to films, the spaghetti western films, which have a brief but I think significant history in Indian cinema or Hindi cinema at least. And then the way he's talking to that guy. The first time you see him, and like, Seth, what have you done to yourself? No, and then these iconic lines, Barat aage nahi jayegi, the scene on the bridge, at the dam. But even Himanshu, more than these big scenes, like something small, like when they go to meet Bhai Saab in the jail, and everyone's walking in, and that they're not going to get checked, but Saf still puts his hand forward to get stamped, and he goes chal jutta to that guy, things like that, and even like a line like "Are aaj Golu ko happy birthday? Are Golu tune bataya nahi?" Small things like when that cop goes to Omi's place, and it goes to that arch, and that song is playing, my heart is beating, na repeat, and the cop is getting frisked. He's a cop. I don't know who that actor is. Probably didn't get a better role. He doesn't say anything, but the look on his face, it's Omkara is as much about the blowing us away big scenes, which have depth and ethos and all that stuff. But it's even the small things. Bhai Saab is in the train, and they pull the chain, and the guy says, Gaadi ko maro. Hanji, Hanji, Hanji. If you go to my Twitter bio or X bio now, I list off a few things that I am, but the last two words are "hai," period, Hanji, So because it's just so many things about that film. So it's very hard to pick one scene, but again, the small gems that make up that film. And I know I'm forgetting a lot of them right now as I speak to you, but uh, so much recall value to that movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the scenes that I particularly love are Omkara's intro scene, where he appears from the dark, walking out of
Brilliant.
Tyagi Hostel and into the courtyard wrapped in a black shawl. Doesn't get more Shakespearean than this.
The music even, wow.
Yeah, the background music score, and it doesn't get more Shakespearean than that, and it's so beautifully done because you think that this is UP, right? This is at night, but it just feels like you could just see that scene and you could tell that, hey, this is like a Shakespearean play, that when he walks out from that hostel. And of course the famous scene, the coronation, if you will, of the new Bahubali, where Kesu is chosen, and all the little things there, right? Like when Omkara kind of walks up to Langda first, and then he just hands him over the thali with the vermilion and the janeu, and then proceeds to walk up to Kesu and apply the vermilion to his forehead and put the janeu on him. And that look on Saif's face at that point, and he doesn't want to, let it on, but he's just like looking at it and he knows that he's been done in. But again, Saif is just brilliant in that. And then Saif has to convey that, the result of it as well. So
like what,
that great,
half a minute later, he has to go and speak to this throng of people. Okay, they're far down, they can't see his emotions, but it's a total about face, which is again hats off to his acting in that scene.
And my absolutely favorite scene from the film, though, is when Dolly's father kind of warns Omkara,
Oh,
sitting in the car.
oh,
and we
What a
see
scene.
Dolly. I love that scene. You know, Jamie, and again, something that I noticed recently, which I had not noticed, until now. And again, I might be just reading into this, but just the thought that Vishal has put into this, Vishal and the DOP, because here's the interesting thing. Now, when we see Dolly from Omkara's point of view, when he's leaning against the car window and he's talking to Dolly's father, right? And again, he's wearing those shades at that time.
Mhm.
And he's looking at Dolly, standing on the other side of the car. So he's looking at her from his shades and the tinted car window. And that's why if you look at that scene, Dolly appears like a mysterious, like a ghost-like figure,
Mhm. Mhm.
aligning with the warning from her father that, look, this girl is not someone who's trustworthy. Be careful. That's what he's trying to tell Omkara. And then the car passes and we see, Dolly just standing there. And she's like an image
Mhm.
of innocence and purity and, everything good. And so that's the actual reality, right? Now, this is
Brilliant.
not from the point of view of Omkara, from the shades and the tinted car window, but that's how she is. But that's how he's looking at her when the dad is telling him, that, hey, be on the lookout. So all these little things, I mean, they're just so brilliantly done. And the title drops right then and there. So that's, again, a great kind of a
No,
moment
it's a
as well.
great. Again, I mean, I'm getting the actor who plays Vakir Saab. I think he's done a few other small roles in
Yes, yes.
in Vishal C. But he's in the White Ambassador. He puts the window down and he does this. I mean, this is Bahubali, but he calls him and says, "जो अपने बाप को ठग सकती है, वो किसी की सगी नहीं हो सकती." It's just one line, but it's a line that sticks with you. So it's the writing. It's everything which you so aptly described, and it's also just very good acting. So it's just one of those lines which it's what is it, 10, 12 words, but it leaves an impact and it puts the doubt in Omi Shukla's mind. So brilliant, brilliant.
I think the actor is Kamal Tiwari, is that right? Who plays
It
as Othello.
sounds like a name from that belt, which would,
Right.
and I'm sure he's done stage because he seems like one of those actors that Vishal would have done his research on, or maybe they worked together. I've never seen him
Probably.
in too many movies, but he only has 3-4 scenes. You know, the hostel scene. इसमें आधा खून तो उस कंजर का है और आधा ब्राह्मण and all. I mean, when you have small screen time, but you make us talk about you 19 years later. Hats off to Mr. Kamal Tiwari.
Absolutely. Well said. And then that closing shot with the swing.
Oh,
What do you make of that? How do you interpret that?
haunting, and that Jag Jare Gudiya, the way it falls. And this is a sound. Again, going back to Sholay, it's for me, it starts with the Sholay reference and it ends with the Sholay reference. I've never heard Vishal or any of these writers talk about Sholay, but that film is so iconic. It's influenced many people. But
Yes.
Sholay is that one film, even if it's on TV or OTT, I can't watch that scene, when Gabbar kills but the swing. So I just find it more than a coincidence that it starts with a hat tip to Sholay and it ends. Now, comparing the two films, I know we get stuck in nostalgia and all that jazz. Omkara is a far superior film than Sholay, but in 1975, what Sholay did by running at Minerva Theater for what 5 to 6, 7 years, and what it spawned, in the decades afterward. I just think that it's haunting, but to me it's a as in you had your theory about the glasses too. I think it's some hat tip to Sholay because when I see a swing, and of course a body on it, creepy as hell, and what a way to wrap that film up.
Jamie, you know that I'm going to make a clip of you saying that Omkara is a far better film than Sholay and tag you, right?
It's the truth.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's the craft is there. I mean, it's just perfect. But yeah, I mean, I always wondered, what to make of that scene. I mean, what an ending! And like I never saw that as a hat tip to Sholay, but it's very interesting what you bring this up because the opening shot definitely is. So maybe that was intentional. That's a very interesting point that you raised. I always saw that again the ending as something that it again like kind of sums up the core of Othello that, what you see, you perceive, and what's the reality, and it's like, once that curtain of clouded judgment has been moved away, you see the actual reality behind it. And so that was like the what the metaphor was there. So I always saw it like that. But yeah, the creak of the swing definitely reminds one of Sholay. So very well could be a nod to that great movie.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just goes back to the seriousness of that scene, right? We've read, we've seen, we've in school days, we've even acted in various Shakespeare plays, where the ending is not going to be fun. It's going to be morose and dark. But to still stay true to Othello and to bring it out, um, I think before this, I had seen what's Kenneth Branagh's version of it, and it has some similarities cinematically, but this was, I mean, just where it's set, India, UP, the Angan, I mean, so many houses in UP, that kind of house have the swing there. So to take something as innocuous as a swing in someone's house, but to have it end like that with the death of someone who said person wanted to spend their life with, but due to so many factors, the clouded judgment, the trickery, the lies, to take that kind of action is deep. So I think it is an ending that perhaps we all saw coming, but the swing, and then Suresh Wadkar singing Jagaj, and in the second version, the way he's slow, and in the clip, I think the last time he speaks, it's not even a whisper. Even him, the singer, he just like the last ounce of life in Suresh Wadkar's singing performance. It fits so well because the person had just died on that swing, So the music, I hope people watching this understand, like I said, the music, how important it is in taking of it. They're not just songs to get you a loo break in the cinema or to get you dancing or into hum. Every song in that movie takes the film forward like I've never seen, and at least in any Hindi movie.
Yeah, a lot of nuance in the rendition of those songs. Suresh Wadkar,
Fantastic.
Vishal, as well as Rekha Bhardwaj. A lot of nuance there. Few anecdotes, Jamie, that I just wanted to chat about. And I don't know how much of these are internet legends or they're true, but I think at least these three are pretty accurate. Like we talked about, first Amir was supposed to do Langra, and Amir is a great actor. He would have done a great job. I'm absolutely sure about it. But I think they made the right choice. Because Saif really killed it, and I think, like you said, that added surprise of somebody like Saif doing this, also worked. Wonders towards this role. The other one casting anecdote that I found was that Irfan was supposed to do Kesu.
Okay, I
But
hadn't heard that.
yeah, apparently Irfan was supposed to do Kesu, but he just wasn't interested in doing Kesu. And he said, and he said that Saif is the right person to do Langra. So he said, you know what, I'll just take a pass this time. And he didn't do Kesu. And I think at that time, Vivek Oberoi and Ajay Devgan were kind of close, maybe because of company and so it was Ajay Devgan who kind of suggested Vivek's name. And then the third casting anecdote that I came across, and I think again this is fairly accurate because I think I've heard either Robin or maybe Abhishek told me about this when he was on the podcast a long time back. But the initial choice for Dolly was supposed to be Sushmita, and she was supposed to do
Interesting.
Dolly, but then they just thought that maybe Kareena is someone who really fits the bill, and they should go with Kareena. So again, I think that was the right choice. Sushmita is again a great actress, but I think Kareena really fit the bill. But
100%.
what do you think about these little casting choices?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's because we watch the film so often that we find it hard to imagine somebody else. I mean, Shweta Sen has got a good body of work, but I can't see anyone but Kareena Kapoor in that role. Irfan, not surprised at all that he turned that role down because it's probably the second weakest of the top six in that film. And I mean, when you've done Maqbool, right, a role that Manoj Bajpayee was apparently willing to do anything to get, and has gone on record saying that he was crushed when it went to Irfan, like weeks and months of trying to get out of that dark space, having lost out. I mean, Kesu Firangi is it's good fun to watch Vivek Oberoi. I think he owned a lot of scenes, but Irfan would, yes, frankly, to my mind, it's a role beneath him, right? And I think just like Bipasha and Karina and Saif were meant to play these roles, which they probably wouldn't have gotten very often. Vivek Oberoi had a nice. I mean, he'd gone through some bad times, and he also manages to hold it, in that film. So I think everything was meant to happen for a reason. So I'm glad that Irfan said no, and I'm glad that Vivek Oberoi got the chance to do it.
And Vivek again fits that role to the T.
Yeah.
So I think that was the right choice. Let's rank the three Vishal Shakespeare adaptations. So you said Omkara is your absolute favorite. So that's number one. And now number two and number three.
I mean, Maqbool has to be there. I mean,
Right. Right.
it's just so close. I mean, you watch Maqbool now. It's just outstanding. I mean, there's so much. I mean, talk about haunting. Like when he sees Abuji's ghost and all that stuff, the blood, and I mean, Tabbu. You have Tabbu in at the peak of her powers. You have Irfan Khan. The wider cinematic audience is now waking up to his genius, which we'd seen for more than a decade, if not 15 years, but to get that kind of role. So for me, the third one is so far behind because these two are just outstanding. Outstanding.
Absolutely. I think we are again in agreement. Only thing is that I would put Maqbool ahead of Omkara, but I think Haider is like a distant third. And
Haider, I have problems with Haider. I mean, this could be a different podcast for a certain day.
Sure.
I think I don't know. This is not anything that I've heard, but I think it made a couple of films that perhaps were. I think had the Julius Caesar film not been shelved, had it been made the way he planned and it came out at the time that he wanted to, Vishal's film trajectory would have been. It's brilliant, but it could have been a lot better. A few films he sort of lost his touch, and I just think he was at best when sticking to the Bard. But I think Heather was probably, again, I don't know the sequence or when he planned it, but I think it just came out at a time where he'd had a few off kilter films and he tried to get the Gadi back on the putri. Again, fantastic performances, but it just seemed forced. It seemed forced to me in ways, but maybe that's a podcast for a different day.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think we are in agreement. I think as a whole, it is perhaps a lesser film, but the performances again are just to die for there, and the casting
again,
as well.
Sorry to cut you off. If he had not made Omkara and Maqbool and Haider was a standalone film, it would have been a modern classic. But it's because the bar had been set so bloody high by those two, right? And for me, I mean, I have friends who really love that film, but it's a distant third as far as Vishal's Shakespeare trilogy goes.
Do you know what was the casting for the Caesar film?
Well, Sanjay Dutt was the main lead, and I'm forgetting. I want to say
man. I would have loved to see that.
Again, don't quote me on this or go and check it out, but I think he wanted to take Arshad Warsi because of the rapport they had in the first two Munna. And I think again, Sanju for sure, but something tells me he wanted to take Arshad Warsi and give him the role, just like how he changed Saif's career. I think he wanted to, that was the plan. But again, I don't know. But Sanjay Dutt for sure was supposed to play Julius Caesar.
And this was after Omkara and before Haider, right?
This was planned after Omkara. Yes.
Very
So
interesting.
if things had gone well, it probably would have come out in 8 or something like that.
Very interesting. And what's your favorite Othello film adaptation among the English films?
No. Again, in school we were shown the Kenneth Branagh version.
Yeah.
So for me, again, I can't remember seeing a lot of them.
Have you seen the Orson Welles?
No, I've not seen that. I've seen that. Was it Bertolucci who made Romeo and Juliet in the 80s? I saw that. What else is there? I think just somehow for me that
Okay.
Kenneth Branagh's version of Othello was the best that I've seen, but I can't claim to have watched a whole lot of them.
Okay. Okay. I really like this one film that was made in 2001 called O. Have you seen this? It was,
Yes, 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 yes.
yeah,
I've
it's
seen
set
that.
in high school, and I really like that.
Basketball, but yes, that's a good one. I had totally forgot about that. That's a good one. Yes, yes.
Recently, I just found out that it was directed by Tim Blake Nelson, the popular character actor. So
I
I
know
had
him. I
no,
know the face. I did not know that. I did not
yeah,
know
I
that.
did not know that. He's a common stay in the Coen Brothers films,
Yeah.
but he directed that film, and I really liked it when I watched it. I haven't seen that film in a while, but that's
I
one
saw
film
it.
that came to
I
my
went to
mind.
Blockbuster. I went to Blockbuster when Blockbuster was still a thing
Yeah,
one weekend. And I used to go to the nearest, I was in a small place called Worcester, Ohio during college. I would just go to the nearest Blockbuster and I'd rent three movies and I'd watch them twice on a Saturday, Sunday, because we were all broke in college. So 2 days was all we could afford. And O was one. I don't think I'd seen the trailer. But I mean, back in the day, I don't know what your memories are or your viewers, but when you walked into a Blockbuster, 20 odd years ago, it was an experience. Like all the
absolutely.
films were there.
Yeah.
So, and as a film nut, I just loved. So I remember like, hey, this looks pretty cool, and I remember getting that. So I watched it in my college room, and I watched it twice. Quite a good movie. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Going to Blockbuster was an event. And then finally, Jamie, which Shakespeare adaptation would you love to see Vishal do next, and why?
Again, because of Julius Caesar, what that screenplay could be in his hands, I think that would be an outstanding one. But I think he's made peace with the fact that he's not going down that road again. And he's made three. Many will say, I mean, I'm going to put Hyder back in that bucket and say those are three fantastic adaptations. But I think he's made personal choices that I don't think he's dabbled in the Tarantino genre and this and that. I don't think he would go back. But just for what Caesar the play is, from the mind of Shakespeare, I think that would be the one I would want to see made.
And what would be your cast for it?
Again, it's a tricky one. If this film were to be announced tomorrow morning or the day this podcast drops, um, Sanjay, that now is beyond the hill. It would have to be someone like, I think Jaideep Alawat would crush it right now.
Yeah, that's a
He
great choice.
would. He would. He gets into the physicality of characters, and having had the opportunity to work with him for 2 weeks in a film where he had to lose immense amount of weight after doing Patal Lok 1. The look, the eyes, if they gave him that typical Julius Caesar haircut, I think he'd be like Joaquin Phoenix level in Gladiator, or better. So I think that's one role that he would crush. Beyond that, I'm struggling to find actors. You put me on the spot here, but just to play Caesar, I think Jaideep would crush it.
Yeah, I one play that I always wanted to be made in Hindi, not by Vishal, but even before that, was I really wanted to see Bachchan as Shylock, and but
Interesting. Ah,
again, he is now maybe just a bit too old, and now maybe if I was to cast for Merchant of Venice, probably I would go with Bajpayee in that role, but I would have loved to see that.
I agree. I agree. In a different time, Bachchan Saab, hands down, maybe not that long ago, maybe even 18, 20 years ago, around
Yeah.
the Omkara time when he was going through that tremendous phase. But yeah, Manoj Bajpayee right now, I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's a good one.
What else, Jimmy? What else would you like to add for Omkara?
I mean, we've just discussed so much. I think the little oddities that it throws up, the little twists and turns, how it, despite knowing where
Yes.
having read the play in high school, in acting class, having done a few scenes of it, having watched the Kenneth Branagh version, when you know where this train wreck is going, but still to be surprised "Oh, teri, ye kaisa ho gaya?" And just to take it from that world of Shakespeare and throw it into Western UP,
That's something.
all those guys, even that Surrender Kaptan, I've only seen him on screen twice, and the other one was the Blue Umbrella.
Yeah.
The guy has 2 or 3 lines, and when they show him the MMS and he's cursing and he says, "Ghagre mein ghuske ho rahi thi fundraising," just when you're given, I mean, Pankaj Tripathi, the first time I saw him was there, Jaake
Absolutely.
keh de ke,
Yeah.
but they stick with you. You don't know their names. Now we know Pankaj Tripathi because unlike countless actors of that background and that lack of opportunity, he's broken the ceiling and gone through. Surinder Kaptan, what's his backstory? Was he an actor? I believe he's actually a writer who was not keen to act. I think Vishal got him to act. He has that one scene when they're on the truck, and he puts the bottle and he says, and he taunts him. And the next scene is when Omkara gets his revenge, and then and the song plays as he walks up the brick laying thing, and that's when Omkara flashes on screen the first time. He goes to the hand pump and he just nods his head to the old lady, and she pumps and he washes, and he says "Jaake bol de." So it's just these small guys who manage to make screen time count alongside bigger names. It's just one of the gems that I think that film throws at us.
And how would you make the case for Omkara for somebody from Gen Z who hasn't watched it?
My gosh, I struggle to get through to this generation, but
We all do.
if you I would say, in a nutshell, if you want to understand in 2006, which was not the best year for India commercially, it was a very good year. But I would say 75 to 80% of the Hindi films that came out that year, and I've watched a lot of them, were just popcorn fluff, or even like really a lot of Akshay Khanna, Akshay Kumar, films which were sort of made with the same plot, to understand why that film broke the mold. And again, this was a year of Munna Bai 2. This was a year of some gems like Khosla Ka Ghosla, Door. I'm forgetting a couple. I think Being Cyrus came out. So, so in a year of pretty average but successful Bollywood fare, what that film did to an audience or a generation, to understand that, I would say go, and how it took someone like Saif Ali Khan to go from Ye Dil Lagi and Main Khiladi Tu Anari and all those numerous films, Ashika Wara, a lot of duds, and to give him that role, that's one reason why you have to watch how it broke stereotypes of what a man or a woman could do, So outstanding film.
Well, there you have it, kids. If you haven't watched Omkara, that's the reason why you should watch this great film. If you haven't watched this film, highly recommend. Jamie recommended it as well, and I love this film as well. Thank you so much, Jamie. This was great.
Pleasure, man. Good fun. This is one of the most fun non-cricket chats I've had in a long time. So thank you for having me on the show. And I get a feeling we'll do something else down the line.
Definitely, for sure. I would love to, do something later on. Thank you so much. If you liked the episode, do spread the word on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your pods. Also, please do drop us a review when you get a chance. You can follow me on Twitter and Insta at loveofcinemasf8. You can reach me by email with your suggestions and comments, and you will find the email ID in the show notes. That's the episode. This is Himanshu, signing off, and like always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.